please be aware of that should you just decide to chime in and participate, which I hope you will do. Welcome to the Richmond Earth Series 2020. This is a brand new series, and this is the inaugural session. My name is Susanna Calvert, and I am, I don't know what we call it, but the team leader for the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Richmond's Earth Ministry, which started in January. And we created this series as a way to together explore the holistic ways we can care for and show love to Earth on topics ranging from environmental justice to conservation to healing practices. This series was created in partnership with the Living Water Community Center, and Drew Nagy is here, so thank you, Drew, for being a partner, and also with the Foundation for Family and Community Healing, which is a local nonprofit that I founded more than a year ago. I also want to give a shout out to the James River Hikers Meetup and to the founder, Dennis Bussey, for making me an organizer so that we could also make this a meetup group for that really fantastic group of hikers who love the James as we all do in Richmond. Okay, so today's session, as I mentioned, is called Energy, Justice, and Conservation, and our speaker is Eric Gopalrud, who's the chair of the Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions up in Fairfax County. He founded this organization 8 years ago in partnership or as part of the Unitarian Congregation of Fairfax. So Eric is part of the Unitarian Fellowship up in Northern Virginia, and the organization has been fabulously successful under Eric's leadership. It has more than 75 congregations involved and 2,500 activists who are looking for local solutions for climate change. And I just want to say personally that it's been really inspiring to me to get to know and work with Eric. He's been enormously helpful and supportive of our budding efforts in the UU with the Earth Ministry. I met him by accident when I was up visiting George Mason. He happened to be meeting with the director there of the Institute for Sustainable Earth the same day I was, and I begged to crash that party. And so it's just been a real pleasure working with Eric ever since.
Thank you.
So without further ado, I think I'd like to hand it over to Eric. We have about 45 minutes for his presentation, and then 30 minutes for Q&A and discussion or whatever we want to talk about. And I'm sure he has, I know he has many other topics besides this to talk about, including his local advocacy work, which maybe we can invite him back for another session. But today is really about energy justice and what we can do as individuals for energy conservation. So thank you so much for speaking with us today, Eric.
Thank you. Thanks, Susanna. And it's really a pleasure to speak with you this morning. I'm going to go through a bunch of information which hopefully you'll find useful. I'm hopeful also that at a couple of points you may find that there are advocacy opportunities which I will definitely encourage you to jump on. As Susanna said, my name's Eric Gopalrud. I am by profession a psychologist, but by avocation a climate warrior, and have been working on this for some time. This workshop was developed in cooperation with another environmental group called Eco Action Arlington that developed a program called Energy Masters, which is built on the same kind of model as Master Gardeners or Master Naturalists, where what they do and what we now do is to train volunteers in how to do weatherization and energy efficiency repairs, and then organize those trainees to work in the homes of people who are low income, elderly, or disabled as a service project, which has the goals of cutting greenhouse gases, cutting utility bills, and improving the health and comfort of their homes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, or I'm going to talk about energy justice, energy poverty, how that applies in the Richmond area. And then I'll talk about what are some of the repairs that we teach people how to do. And hopefully through a quick run through, it'll give you some ideas of things that you can do. And we'd certainly be very interested in working with Susanna and the groups down there in Richmond if you decide you want to develop a program like the Energy Masters program to work to help people who have energy poverty to reduce their utility bills and cut greenhouse gases. So let's see if this works. Okay, so very briefly about the Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions, or as we call it, FACS. It's a faith-based climate advocacy group centered in Northern Virginia. As Susanna said, we've got about 75 faith communities involved, ranging from UUs, Hindus, Sikhs, Muslim, Jewish, Roman Catholic, all the various versions of Protestantism, and about 2,500 activists. And we help people of faith live their values through developing local solutions to the climate crisis. And if you want more information about us, take a look at faithforclimate.org, which is a pretty well-developed website. So what's happening? Okay, in Richmond, since 1970, the average temperature in Richmond has gone up by 2.2 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a little bit less than the rest of the state, but when you get these questions about, well, global warming and climate change, that's something that happens by 2021. No, we're already seeing that that the temperatures are rising. Since 1970, the average temperature during the summer has gone up by about 2.5 degrees. Richmond is also experiencing more days where the temperature is over 95 degrees. So since 1970 to 2016, Richmond is now experiencing five more days per year where the temperatures are over 95 degrees. So when people say, you know, it's not really happening, it's happening, and it's happening right in Richmond. So what's going to happen in the future? Take a look now at what the projections are if we go with the current emissions trends, which are those red boxes, or if we start cutting back modestly. By 2050, we're going to see over 20 days of over 100 degrees temperature in Richmond. That's real unhealthy. And not only is Richmond getting warmer, it's getting warmer faster than the communities around it. This shows what the warming trend is per decade since 1956. And what you can see is, compared to the rural areas, Richmond itself is getting much hotter faster. Here's a heat map of Richmond. And what it's showing is the differences, which can be as great as 15 degrees on a hot day. And you can see here, this was one particular day where the bright red areas were over 100 degrees, where the bluer areas, which is where there's either water or good ground cover, trees, can be as much as 15 degrees less. Now, this is not random. This is a study done by Jerome Jerome Hoffman there at the Virginia Science Museum. He's the chief climate scientist there, where he took a look at where we had heat islands and people were most vulnerable. And what he looked at and what he found is that this almost exactly corresponds to the red line areas of where if you were poor and Black, you could not get a mortgage. These are areas with lots of concrete and very few trees. And all of that stuff is out at Hoffman's website. And he is a terrific resource for you there in Richmond, because what he's trying to do is to address this issue of heat islands and the disproportionate effect of where people live for their vulnerability to heat and extreme weather. So this is a quote from William Barber III, the head of the Poor People's Campaign, that we have the experience now of frontline communities, whether this is in Richmond or in Guatemala, who are experiencing decades of disruption because of fossil fuel incursions, and they're the first to be hit by the climate crisis. So what is energy poverty? Energy poverty is low-income Virginians who face high energy burdens, meaning that they're paying more than the average for their utility bills. They have less income and pay more. Research suggests that this is both for single family and multifamily households, that energy efficiency can end up costing 6.5% to even 11.5% of their income, which is paid to Dominion. It particularly affects people of color. And I want to show you here a map of energy burden by zip code. And I believe, let's see if we can see my cursor. This is approximately the area of Enrico and Richmond. You can see there's considerable variation in these zip codes between those that are, if you take a look, low income and disproportionately minority, and those that are more affluent. Here, take a look at a study which shows that over half of low-income Richmond households spend more than 6.5% of their income on energy. And 1/4 of the low-income Richmond households spend over 11.5% of their income, which puts Richmond as one of the top energy disparity cities in the country. Here's another study that looks at Virginia's energy efficiency rankings. And you can see over here on utilities, we're incredibly low on how energy efficient Dominion and Appalachian are. Our building policies don't seem so bad, but in fact, I'll mention in a few minutes, they actually are pretty bad for residential. And then over here, combined heat and power is very, very low. Right now, Virginia ranks 29th out of 50 in energy efficiency programs. That is beginning to be addressed by the state legislature this year. They passed a couple of really important bills, but at this point, Virginia is well below average and well below what we need if we're going to address greenhouse gases. So one of the really important things that they passed this year, the legislature passed, was the Virginia Clean Economy Act. And as part of that, we will join the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, affectionately known as RGGI. We will be joining 10 other states in the East, and here they are listed, that participate in a cap and trade program where quarterly greenhouse gas emitters, particularly power plants, are required to bid on sort of how much pollution they can generate. There's a cap that's set, and each year that cap goes down. I think it goes down by 5% per year, but I could be off. So that the amount that can be emitted in Virginia will be capped and then slightly lowered each year. And the power plants will have to bid on how much they have to pay for the pollution. It's estimated that this will generate about $150 million annually for Virginia. 50% of that money will go to low-income energy efficiency. So this will be for county low-income residents, programs that are run by the government, as well as subsidies for energy efficiency for people who are independent or have their own homes or their own apartments. 25% will go to shoreline resiliency, and 25% will be in other funds to low-income communities. So this, in a time when we're going to be experiencing a whole lot of financial distress associated with the pandemic, starting January 1st, 2021, this is a new source of funds that will be available to help us start to address energy poverty in Virginia. The other thing that I think is really important is Virginia being what's called a Dillon state or Dillon rule state. Unless the state legislature explicitly authorizes localities to do something, say ban plastic bags, all of the authority remains at the state level. That includes Virginia's building codes. Virginia generally adopts the international standard codes, which are called the International Construction Codes. Because we are different, the national standard is now the 2018 ICC codes. Virginia residential remains at the 2009 version. The energy efficiency, the difference here is the national standard for your ceiling. The rating for insulation is an R49, and for frame walls, it's an R20. And there are also some standards for thermal windows and HVAC ducts. The Virginia residential standard is substantially lower, as you can see. The Virginia building codes are revised on a 3-year basis. So there's a whole lot of input, and every 3 years they get locked in place for the next 3 years. Public comment on updating the codes is open through July 3rd. The home builders associations have resisted updating insulation standards, citing it would be too costly, and we don't do it that way in Virginia. But organized consumers and advocates can push back and have an impact of bringing Virginia up to the 21st century. If I mentioned about my tree cutting, they're chopping up my tree, I'm sorry. So why do we need a stronger residential building efficiency? Energy policy, it improves the grid stability and reduces cost, reduces global warming. It increases actually the value of buildings that are constructed. Defaults are less, It improves local jobs, increases local jobs, increases housing affordability. It's more comfortable, and people want it. The people who don't want it are the residential building associations. So we have an opportunity, and I'd be glad to provide more information. The Faith Alliance is working with the Sierra Club and others to push against the Home Builders Association and push for Virginia to assume the same standards as the rest of the country, if not stronger. Now, this presentation now is going to shift to, so what can you do, and what can you do to help others to reduce their energy costs and to reduce waste. And so we're going to focus on 4 areas: air sealing, energy efficiency, water efficiency, and increasing awareness or behavior. So this is a shift from policy to practice. The key issue that impacts energy efficiency is the building envelope. Essentially, what you want to do is to follow that green line. The places where people live, you want that to be sealed as much as possible from heat leak or from heating or cooling coming in. There will always be some air movement. In fact, one of the pieces of the building standards that we are working on is that the standard right now is that the air will turn over no more than 5 times per hour. We want to push it down, and the international standard is 3 turnovers per hour. So what we're going to focus on, as I discuss the kinds of energy repairs that you might do, is on how can we plug leaks in the building envelope. And there are a number of places where you are likely to find leaks. And by the way, I will send these PowerPoints as a PDF to Susanna so that she can share them with you. But here are the various kinds of places where there are likely to be holes in the envelope. If you think of the envelope as very similar to a balloon, and any little hole in a blown up balloon lets air out. What we're going to focus on is how do you patch the holes so that the air can't leak out or through convection come in. The first area is caulking windows and trim. Frequently what we find is that, especially in older homes, that there are cracks that we find around the windows, either on the inside or the outside, where putting very simple caulk will cut down airflow. My brother, who lives in an old mill building up in Massachusetts with big, huge windows, found that when the wind blew, it would blow out candles from the cracks in his walls. By applying very inexpensive caulk, he was able to make his house or his apartment a whole lot more comfortable. Oops, let me go back one. Sorry. Okay. So here's some places where if you, particularly what we find in working with low-income residents, they often are living in substandard housing. And so finding cracks like this are frequent. Here over on the right-hand side is an apartment that we were working in, or a house that we were working in with the Energy Masters. Because there were so many cracks around the outside of a casement window in their basement, the only way that they could keep the cold out was by stuffing pillows in the casement and blocking out any light and trying to block the cold. After we were able to caulk the window, they got their window back and were able to enjoy it without pillows. Other things that we find, doors often are very leaky, and weather stripping around places where the door and the door frame have started to deteriorate. Often we're able to put foam with some sticky, with some adhesive on the back side of it to plug up or to break some of those leaks. So weather stripping is valuable. Door sweeps. Again, one of the places where air often comes through, and what you can often see when you look outside, look out from inside a house, is daylight underneath the door. Weather stripping, which produces a barrier, can be easily applied or lowered. Most doors have already weather stripping, can be lowered so that it blocks that gap. This is something that we find pretty often, which is that plumbers like to make good-sized holes for them to put their pipes through. Often they're not real good at then plugging up those holes, and it's a big pinprick in the balloon. There are several kinds of ways that underneath sinks is a place where we often find it, underneath the kitchen sinks, bathroom sinks, in basements where you have ducts going to the outside or pipes going to the outside. You find that plumbers are really generous with the size holes that they make. And through insulation, such as here is a foam insulator called a backer rod, or you can use a foam, spray foam, to plug up the holes. I'll show you the spray foam here. Here's an example of the kind of spray foam. I often, when I give a presentation like this, I often sound like an advertisement for Home Depot, because all of these things are, when we can get out of our homes and actually start purchasing things, are available. This is a spray which is really good at stuffing up those holes and does that. Another area where, especially in older homes, we find a lot of leaks is in the heating and air conditioning ventilation in the ducts. If you go down, if you go in your own home or you go to someone else's apartment that you're working with, we often find that the ducts, the joints of the ducts have started to separate, and it can become really warm down in the area around the furnace. But very few of us live around our furnaces. So you're paying for that heat that is escaping through the ducts, the gaps in the ducts or in the joints, rather than getting the heat transferred to where you want it, where you live. So there is a tape that works extremely well. When I first started doing this, I thought, well, of course, duct tape, right? Duct tape is probably the worst kind of tape you could possibly use, because duct tape turns brittle when exposed to heat. So this is called a silver tape or a metal tape. It's sticky on the backside, and you just pull it off. And as my friend here is showing, just wrapping it around the HVAC ducts cuts and reduces the waste coming out of those joints. Now we're going to shift. I thought I had another slide. Another thing that we frequently do, you might want to consider, is putting insulation on the hot water pipes coming out of your hot water heater. There are long 3-foot insulation pieces of insulation that wrap around the hot water ducts. Again, the idea is, if you're going to pay for the electricity or the heating, you want it to go to the places you want it to go and not sit in your basement or sit around the furnace. Now, here's a chart around lighting. As the cost of LEDs has dropped, they become better and better at not only lasting longer, but the return on the cost is getting shorter and shorter. So that now we're finding that the cost of an LED is made up often in less than a year in reduced energy use. Another area that's kind of disgusting, but really important, and very few of us actually do it, is cleaning out refrigerator coils. Your refrigerator has to work a whole lot harder when it can't exchange the heat that is generated in the refrigeration process. So cleaning out the coils underneath can improve the energy efficiency and reduce the cost of running your refrigerator by, I've heard numbers up as high as 50%. It's something that is supposed to be done, or you should do about once a year. Often you find that it has never been done, and it's pretty gross, but you find that it's extremely effective. You can do it by running a brush underneath your refrigerator or a vacuum. This is the #1 cause of house fires: dryer ducts that are full of lint. So probably the dryer duct that was the most striking, which I don't think I have a picture of, was the outside vent in one apartment had somehow fallen off or wasn't working, and it was a nice warm place for a bird to build its nest. And so we had to clean out a bird's nest out of a dryer duct. Dryer ducts are the other side of your dryer. You know, you may clean out the lint on one side, but this is the back side. And improperly installed dryer ducts or ones where it's crimped from the wall, crimped from the dryer, I mean, can accumulate a lot of very flammable lint. So you got heat, something that's flammable. It's the #1 cause of house fires. So cleaning that is important. Also, air filters. Air filters can make, if you have dirty air filters, can make the cost of your running your heating or air conditioning much higher. And they're very inexpensive to replace, and people rarely replace them at a decent interval. About every 3 months is generally considered a good period. Oh, I did have one. This is the insulation used to insulate hot water pipes, the ones that come out of the hot water heater and that go up into your house. They're these foam insulator rods that can just be placed around them. And then you end up getting the hot water where you want it, and the heat not going off into your basement. Setting thermostats and ceiling fans are another area that's important. recommendations are that home temperatures generally could be reduced from what they most people currently keep them, and the less that you put a burden on your furnace, the less cost. Same with the hot water heater. The recommended setting is about 120 degrees, because if you have a traditional hot water heater, it's heating the water all of the time. And so the higher the temperature is that you're keeping the water heated, the more expensive and the less efficient your use of the electricity or the gas that is going into heating. So you can go down and see about what is the temperature that it is set at. If you can set your temperature, 120 degrees is certainly sufficient. Now, on water efficiency, there are aerators, which are these kind of plugs that are at the in each of your faucets that allow the stream of the water to come out in a steady flow. When most of our homes were built, there was no issue about, or no one even thought about water efficiency. For very low price, go to Home Depot, you can get low flow aerators that cuts unnecessary water use, but still keeps the same rate of flow. So it doesn't feel like you're losing water intensity, but what it does is it cuts down so that you're not using as much water at a time. So installing these little plugs, which are very simple to unscrew in your bathroom faucets, in your kitchen faucets, and substituting these aerators, which I think cost $1 or less, substantially reduces the water that is used. So what are the savings? One LED, 9-watt LED, which is the equivalent to a 60-watt incandescent, saves as much as $6 per year. If you plug exterior gaps, and that could be either those gaps underneath the sink or electrical outlet, and plugging electrical outlets, you can save as much as almost $4. Sealing a window, again, substantial savings. Cleaning your refrigerator coil, again, savings. Adding furnace filters, new furnace filters, or insulating your hot water pipes, all are energy savings. This is really important, particularly for folks who have energy poverty, who are spending substantial parts of their income on their utility bills. So here's a picture of some of our energy masters, where we train people on how to do these hands-on home improvement, and then delivering the programs, educational programs, to schools and community groups, and doing energy efficiency retrofits, repairs in the homes of people who are low income and elderly. Great program developed by Echo Action Arlington, and we're bringing it out to Fairfax County. So that's the sort of a really fast run through of the issues of energy efficiency, energy poverty, and then sort of what we can do about it at a hands-on level, and hopefully also at a policy level. So I'd certainly be open for any questions. Susanna, if you'd like to.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. That was so informative. I made a whole bunch of things for myself, and what a perfect thing to do while in quarantine, right?
And I will send you the PDF so that you can then share it with folks.
Yeah, I think you sent me it already, so I can email it to the group that registered by the Google form. And for those of you on the James River Hikers meetup, if you will just message me your email address, I'll send it to you. I I wish there was a box you could just buy at Home Depot that has all of these things, because one of my questions is like, where do you find all of this at Home Depot? But before we dive into my 20 or so questions, I want to just invite the participants to click on the participants button on their dashboard, and you can, or click on the reactions. And if you want to raise your hand for a question, we can do it in an orderly manner, or we might have a small enough group, we can do it in an unorderly manner and you can just chime in. But I guess my first question is, where in Home Depot do you find all these supplies?
One of the, I really like Home Depot. You know, I'm a kind of a amateur home repair guy. Home Depot, the salespeople are really good if what you say is, I'd like any of the following. But I have my friend and colleague who does the co-training with me, Jill Barker, who actually has assembled the entire kit and does make these available, so that, you know, if you wished, and I can send you the contact. She is essentially selling kits at cost, which then goes to support Eco Action Arlington.
Okay, and I also saw that she's the contact person to become an energy master. So if
That's correct.
If we as individuals, or maybe if our UU wants to organize an effort, we would contact her to see how we would go about it.
Yes, or me. I mean, I do it as well.
Okay.
Hey, Eric, I had a question. Thank you so much for putting all that together. It was good reminding and very concise. My question is, can you tell us more about how the Sierra Club, or how you're working with the Sierra Club, I guess, to identify homes in Richmond that might need this kind of help? I'm thinking that that's probably something that's already in process.
Well, we're working with the Sierra Club on changing the state's building energy efficiency codes.
Got it.
So we're not specifically identifying places in Richmond. Okay. The person who is doing that, and the group that's doing that, is Jerome Hoffman.
Oh, okay, Jeremy Hoffman, yeah.
Oh, Jeremy Hoffman, that's
yeah.
Right. Because he has a program that is specifically focused
right.
on addressing heat islands in
I am
Richmond.
familiar with
okay.
Jeremy. I'm on the board for the RVA Environmental Film Festival here in Richmond. And,
I love it.
Yeah, and thank you. And we work closely with Jeremy and have had for over the years. He speaks at some of our films, and yeah, he is a great source. I hadn't thought about reaching out to him, but that's a good reminder.
Yeah, no, I mean, those are his heat maps.
Right.
And he is, I took a look on his website, and he has some programs that are working on addressing the heat islands. So
he's also got
I go to him first.
Yeah, he's also got a great plan for basically reversioning the big parking lot in front of the Virginia Science Museum into a park.
Well, I've seen his photos, which are, you know, infrared photos, which are terrific, that show, you know, the asphalt glowing bright red.
Yeah.
And the vegetation is you know, a cool blue.
Yeah.
Which actually reminds me of one of my favorite tools for energy efficiency is an infrared thermometer, which you can buy for 20 to 25 bucks from Black & Decker is what I like, Amazon, or I'm pretty sure you can buy it over at Home Depot. What it does is it shows you what the temperature is of, say, heating ducts, and you can see where you've got leaks. Or one of the things we've done at our church, when we've had an energy efficiency focus for our climate group, is give one of these infrared thermometers to a 14-year-old boy or a 12-year-old girl and say, find the coldest place in the church.
That's a great idea.
And that gets a great conversation about, well, are there cold places in your room? And what could be done to improve them? So, these little, there's nothing more exciting to a pre-adolescent boy or girl is something with a gun, something with a trigger.
Yeah. Yeah. And Eric, will you, maybe Susanna can send us your contact information if we have follow-up questions?
Sure, and it's on the PDF. It's the last slide of the
Great.
PDF.
And on that note, Eric, for those of us who might want to support this housing code change,
Yes.
Is there something you can send us on that, or should we? Are you just referring us to your website?
No. You would not want to go there naively. It's among the wonkiest stuff I've found. So I will send you some contact information and background on the issue, and then you can distribute it.
I'll send that along with the slides and your contact information to everybody.
Right.
Yeah. So hikers, you could also message me in the chat your email address, and I'll just email it to everyone else who's registered. Thanks for that question, Carol. Are there other questions? I have a whole bunch.
Okay.
Okay, in the absence of other questions, I'll just keep asking. So the Virginia Clean Economy Act, you said that 25% of the income from that program, which I'm so excited about, will go to, and you just said sort of other programs for energy justice. And you said that 25% would go for energy efficiency subsidies and programs and that kind of stuff. What's that other 25% going to be used for in terms of energy justice? How will that be used?
I don't really recall.
Okay.
There's 50% is going to go for low-income energy efficiency. So that's about $75 million statewide. And so that's something to do some advocacy with there in Richmond and in Rico to make sure that you get a piece of it. And then 25% goes to trying to protect our sinking shorelines. Mm-hmm. And then the other 25%, I'm not sure exactly what that goes to, except that it goes to low-income communities.
Okay. Okay, so the main ways we can support energy justice is work to do the building code, support the building code changes, and maybe become involved in energy masters, which I think is amazing, and to just take steps in our own home.
Well, and one of the things we've done at UU Congregation of Fairfax is that we've run educational programs at the church to help others in our communities to do energy efficiency work. So, education is really important, and there are lots of opportunities once we get back. We can you can do that kind of sharing. One of the things that we also did with the thermal the infrared thermometers is we brought some desk lights and showed what the difference was in the temperature of an incandescent or an LED or a CFL. And it's really remarkable when you point a thermometer at an incandescent light, how hot that gets. You know, if you try to unscrew it, you know how hot it is. But you can see it so graphically when you compare the two.
Well, and we could also do the same kind of assessments in our churches. So I don't know if RUU has done that, sort of like check the pipes and the ducts and the doors, seams, and windows. And I know we have a few handy people in the congregation that might enjoy leading this effort. So that'd be a great idea for us to try to do, and maybe offer to other congregations. That would be that'd be cool. We could have our own little ministry just dedicated to helping churches in the Richmond area, because we know we're not lucky enough to have a fax in Richmond. I wish we could clone Eric and.
Well, I hope you do soon.
However many thousand churches we have in the Richmond area, we really need it.
Well, you do have the Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, or Virginia IPL, which is part of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. And they do a lot of educational programs. Environmental justice is very core to what they do and work on. So you've got a piece of that. There is a program, which again, I can send you some information about, Susanna and the rest of you, that is called the Paris Pledge. The Paris Pledge is a pledge taken by a congregation to reduce their congregation facilities' greenhouse gases by 50% by 2030 and 100% by 2050. And taking that pledge as a congregation starts a process where you start looking at what are the ways that we are using energy or wasting energy. And we've put together a toolkit around how you might go about doing an energy audit in your church or in your faith community. And then what are the return on investments of various kinds of repairs that can be made, whether that's programmable thermostats or replacing the incandescent lights with LEDs, or motion sensors, or turning off the chiller part of drinking fountains. Going and doing some of the kinds of insulation things that I was talking about. There was a terrific program from I think it's called the First Unitarian Church in Portsmouth, Maine. They had an old church, brick church with stained glass windows and all, that was leaky as could be, and they were paying a lot of money for their insulation, or for their heating and electricity. What they did was to build wooden frames and then put plastic covers so that they could essentially make dual pane windows using removable wooden frames, where they could place it over their windows. That not only cut down their church's utility bills, but it then became a not-for-profit, which they are building these frames and giving them to low-income residents to put in their own homes. So it's something that you do for your church or faith community then can become something that can become a service for the community. Just an idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead, Carol.
I was going to say, do you know if there's an easy way to get alerted from either the Sierra Club or somehow when some of these votes come up for the building codes? Is there an alert system that we can get on so we know when our voices are best heard?
Well, one thing you could do, if you don't mind getting a monthly newsletter, is sign up with the Faith Alliance. We send out a monthly newsletter on the first of the month. And certainly with this connection that we've made with Susanna and you all, I'd certainly be very happy to sort of collect either emails or just directly send things to Susanna for engagement from you all.
Yeah, that's a
so
great,
whichever is most convenient.
That's a great idea. I'm trying to capture those things and send them to our listserv. We have a listserv in the First UU for action steps. And I subscribe to a number of newsletter and alerts. I have to say I'm probably not as great at being really detailed at making sure I go through every single one looking for things we can do. So those of you in who are also monitoring these things, if you will help me, like just say, hey, there's an alert here, please make sure it goes out. I'm also have email list to the Mothers Out Front RVA that I send to as well. And if anybody wants to be on that mailing list, who's not part of our UU or ministry, just let me know.
So I put up here my contact information, Jill's, and then also for the building energy efficiency standards. This is the government guy. But again, trying to go through this route is through the government or through their website. You know, it's more down in the weeds than most anybody wants to go. That's why, you know, that's why we have Sierra Club and folks who really care a lot about these issues and have been working them for years.
Eric, did you say that there were some ROIs available associated with the Paris Pledge for investment in these efficiency technologies?
Yes, UUCF put together a toolkit on Paris Pledge, which includes the ROIs for the various kinds of retrofits. And it also kind of walks through how you can make repairs, or what are the repairs.
Oh, okay.
So I'll send that to you.
Thank you. I'll be sending a big fat email to you all.
Okay.
Any other thoughts or questions? Anybody feel inspired to do something? Any ideas for congregations or for your own home?
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you all. And Susanna, let's make sure that the link between Richmond and Fairfax remains strong.
Absolutely. Drew, did you have something you wanted to say? Saw you.
Well, you know, you just asked about any thoughts, and just this this whole conversation that we've had in your presentation, Eric, made me think about how I can personally begin some of these things that you talked about in your own residence at the church that I pastor in Richmond. So Westover Baptist Church, we have a 40,000 square foot building that sits on 2.9 acres. So it's this giant facility, a relatively small congregation at this point. It used to be a big church back in the 60s with a lot of people. And now we have this giant facility. So you made me think about a lot of these things we can do to our own facilities to help reduce our carbon blueprint or footprint, and just cut down on our carbon emissions and greenhouse emissions, and just be more energy efficient.
Yeah. Well, I feel really resentful for any dime that goes to Dominion that doesn't have to go to Dominion. You know, if you can put more money into mission and less into Dominion, that's a good thing.
Maybe that should be the campaign message. Less to Dominion, more to our mission. Yeah.
Well, and there's something I don't really understand all of this about the Clean Economy Act and making Dominion go to clean energy, but I read something about them just trying to purchase carbon-based energy from out of state to get around it. So like they're trying to find a loophole. Am I interpreting that correctly? Does anybody know?
Well, the Virginia Clean Economy Act requires our power companies to be 100% carbon neutral by 2045. And the way that they're going to get there is to, in part, it'll be to get rid of those coal plants, not build new gas-fired plants, expand their alternative energy, but also to purchase renewable energy credits, which are, you know, from, say, a solar farm out in Iowa, to offset some of their carbon that they'll have to continue to produce here. So I think, Susanna, what you were asking about is the purchase of these renewable energy credits that are produced outside of Virginia that will help them reach the goals that are mandated by the law.
Okay, I must have misunderstood it. I thought they were saying they were purchasing carbon producing energy, but that must not be true.
No, but they still are trying to put a big carbon pipeline through, through, I think, the George Washington Forest, and trucking a whole lot of fracked gas down to North Carolina, which is certainly an area that Virginia Interfaith Power and Light has been very much engaged in. So certainly Dominion is not one of the good guys.
Right, fantastic. Trying to pull up my, just wanted to see if there's any other comments or questions. If not, I will send out all of the resource package that Eric's going to put together for us. Thank you. I also wanted to remind folks that that the next item in the Earth series is going to be on Wednesday the 13th, and I hope I have the day of the week and the date paired correctly this time. It's going to be a video presentation from YouTube by Michael Dowd, who's a pro feature evangelist, and I guess he takes a Christian-based theological approach or Christian-based sermon to talk about a beautiful future and Earth and caring for Earth and creation care. So we'll be doing that on Wednesday, May the 13th. And our next presentation is going to be June 4th, which I think is Thursday. And the speaker will be, you're going to be the first to hear it, is Joyce Hostin, who has a company called Rewild My City. And she's an activist, but also helps people in Kingston, Ontario, create a wild ecology within the urban environment. So, you can be in an urban environment and still have a lot of nature and natural diversity. So I hope you'll join us for that. As soon as I have the details, I will circulate it as well. I'd just like to once again thank Eric for a really informative and inspiring talk. Like, I'm literally going to go check out my pipes and everything.
Check out your dryer duct.
And some of those things I'm like, oh, I have that in the basement somewhere. I was wondering what that's for. And I hope you all will do the same, and also find ways to take action during the quarantine, because as frustrating as it can be, it's also really an opportunity to do the things, prioritize the things that we really care about, and now that we have hopefully a little more time for such matters. So thanks again, Eric, for your generosity and your expertise. Thank you all for participating. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.